Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So Gennady Golovkin defeats Kamil Szeremeta by a 7th round stoppage, in which was a dominant performance. You know, this was the sort of fight that we expected. Kamil Szeremeta, despite having an unbeaten record, nobody really envisaged him having any major success in this fight, and that's how it panned out. You know, Gennady Golovkin was in control from the first bell to the last bell, and it was just that simple. I actually did a little fight commentary for this fight last night, where we were a little bit drunk, so I've actually watched this fight back, and watched it with a fresh, sober pair of eyes. And you know, it wasn't a bad performance by Gennady Golovkin. Of course, we have to consider that, you know, Szeremeta really wasn't anything special, not a big puncher, physically not strong. You know, Golovkin really had his way with him. But, you know, Golovkin was doing things in there that I quite liked. The fight, Golovkin basically imposed himself straight away. Szeremeta was trying to box early on, trying to be active with the jab. But in the first round, Golovkin, towards the end of the round, starts to open up. He lands a real hard jab on Szeremeta, which kind of rocks his head back. And I think at that point, Szeremeta realised what he was in with. And towards the end of the round, Szeremeta was dropped by a left hook. Round two, again, more of the same. Gennady Golovkin picking some nice shots, working off the jab. And he was beating down Kamil Szeremeta. He actually dropped him again in the second round. He dropped him in the fourth round. And he dropped him in the seventh round. So Szeremeta was dropped 4 times in this fight. He showed a lot of heart. He kept on getting up. He showed a lot of determination. But, you know, physically, he just really wasn't with it. Didn't hit hard enough. Wasn't fast enough. Wasn't experienced enough. And yeah, he had nothing for Gennady Golovkin. Golovkin, like I said, he won every second of his fight. Occasionally, Szeremeta, he would get through with the odd jab here and there. A couple of right hands got through, but he never really caught Golovkin with anything special. And Golovkin won this fight basically in second gear, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I've not really seen too much reaction to this performance. I've seen a few people say Golovkin looks slow. Yeah, Golovkin's feet have slowed down, but to me his hands looked actually pretty good in this fight. Golovkin in this fight, one thing I noticed, when he was throwing combinations, he wasn't loading up on every single punch. So some of the punches he would throw in a combination, he would throw with like half power, you know, not full power. And then he would maybe throw the third shot with power, you know, varying the power of his combination punches. And that's what he used to do a lot more early in his career. So that was good to see. Golovkin's combination punching in this fight looked a lot better. It looked a lot more fluid. And dare I say, his hands looked a little quicker. I also liked the fact that Golovkin was much more varied with his jab in this fight. A lot of good lead hand control, feints. I know a lot of people picked up on the head movement from Gennady Golovkin in this fight. And he certainly moved his head a lot more in this fight. Although Golovkin has always moved his head. You know, a lot of people kind of get on Golovkin for a lack of head movement. But Golovkin's always had good head movement. There's certain fights where he's not really shown it as much. But yeah, in this fight we saw it. And yeah, to me, it looks like what Jonathan Banks is trying to do with Gennady Golovkin maybe now is starting to show through in Golovkin's style. I don't think Jonathan Banks is necessarily trying to change Gennady Golovkin. I think he's trying to revert Gennady Golovkin back to type what made him such a good amateur and a good pro early in his career. I think that's what Jonathan Banks is trying to get back to, because I felt under Abel Sanchez, Golovkin got a little too power happy. He wasn't setting his work up quite as much, wasn't varying the power of his combination punches. His feint game was going down the drain. And yeah, I just think Jonathan Banks is trying to take Golovkin back to what he once was in the amateurs and as an early pro. So yeah, an impressive performance, but we have to consider, you know, Szeremeta really wasn't anything special. And I think that's all I can really say. What's next for Gennady Golovkin? I mean, there are several fights that I'd like to see him fight, but let's just briefly talk about the realistic fights. That's what we'll talk about. I personally would still like to see Gennady Golovkin fight Billy Joe Saunders. You know, that fight historically has been talked about for quite some time, and I think it'll be a good matchup. The more aggressive guy versus the back foot boxer. Good style match. And Billy Joe, it'll be good on the resume if Gennady Golovkin can beat him. He would be a 2-weight world champion, and that's a good look. And yeah, Billy Joe's a good fighter. He poses some problems. I would still actually really like to see Gennady Golovkin versus Billy Joe. You've also got Demetrius Andrade at 160. That would be a unification fight. Andrade holds the WBO. Golovkin holds the IBF. Andrade, kind of an awkward fighter. Bit of a backpedaler. Fights with an offbeat rhythm. That'll be an interesting fight in itself. So, Andrade for a unification fight is there. Maybe John Ryder at 168. And obviously you've got the third Canelo fight, which I would still watch. I would take Canelo in that third fight, but Golovkin's not going to lie down. He's going to make it a real fun fight. And just like the first two fights were. So yeah, Golovkin wins the fight against Kamil Szeremeta. He looked fairly good. His feet looked a little slow, I have to say. But apart from that, I felt he looked quite decent. But share your thoughts below. Been you guy Del Boy. Peace.